Sometimes new, sometimes old, sometimes overlooked, but always worth a second look. These are Pair of Dice Paradise's picks for the Games of the Week. The greatest sorcerers throughout the kingdom have come together to compete to become the new Archmage in a competition that will span 3 years. So take your place, equip your ancestral magic items, summon your most faithful familiars, and get ready to face the challenges over the next 12 seasons. Seasons is a tactical game of cards and dice which takes place in 2 phases. The first, the Prelude phase, consists of a card draft in which each player will build a 9-card deck which they will then split into 3 packs of 3 cards each for use throughout the remainder of the game, which will be the tournament. And at the beginning of each round of the tournament, a player will roll the Seasons dice, which the players will then draft as well. Each face of these dice has a special ability that will allow the player who claims it to either harvest water, earth, fire, or air energy, which is used to pay the cost of cards that they will put into play, or increase the maximum number of cards that they may put into play, collect energy crystals, or draw additional cards. Each player may choose only 1 die per round, leaving 1 die unclaimed. This unchosen dice determines how far the game's time track moves forward each round. In addition, different dice are rolled during each season, and each season's dice focus on different things. Therefore, players will need to plan ahead in order to adapt to these upcoming changes. What's more, the exchange rates of energy to crystals will vary during the seasons, which will be another thing that players will need to plan for if they want to maximize their power and achieve the highest score possible. At the end of the game, the crystals and victory points are tallied up, and the player with the highest score wins the game, becoming the land's new Archmage for seasons to come. With so many games encouraging underhanded shenanigans and cutthroat strategies, it's nice to periodically play a game with a theme that would seem to offer a change of pace, such as 2003's Santiago, a game about cultivating and watering agricultural fields, which also encourages underhanded shenanigans and cutthroat strategies. But still, in Santiago here, players compete to plant and harvest a variety of different crops, and to accomplish this, a number of tiles denoting various plantation types are added into play each round. The tiles are then auctioned off so that each player gets one. And then these tiles are placed onto the game board along with an ownership marker to indicate how plentiful that tile's yield will be. Now, whoever bid the highest during the round's crop auction may have been able to cherry pick the best place to produce plants, but the player who bid the lowest receives the title of Canal Overseer and will dictate where an irrigation canal will be built that round. The other players can help make suggestions to the Canal Overseer to help them decide on where to place this irrigation, and they can even offer some money to help maybe persuade the Canal Overseer towards their particular suggestion. You know, a quid quo potato, as it were. I don't care what you say, that is the best line I have written all week. At the end of each round, the plantation's water supply will be the result of the decisions made by the players, and if a section of the land isn't sufficiently watered, well, then its production drops dramatically. Now, if that happens more than once, then that field may revert to fallow ground where nothing's going to grow at all, ever, for all time, because you can't eat dirt. At game's end, each plantation is counted according to its type, with the bigger ones scoring higher. But since each area's ownership markers play a role as well, the same plantation can give drastically different points for different players. Santiago may look like an innocuous little farming game, but its auctions, area influence, commodity speculation, and bribery make it anything but. In El Gaucho, players are cattle barons sending out their gauchos to the dice rodeo to collect as many stately cattle as possible. Yes, I said dice rodeo. In El Gaucho, players are cattle barons that send out their workers in order to collect sets of cattle tiles and then sell them all off. Obtaining cattle is done through a worker placement system, where each player has 7 gauchos which can be placed on various action spaces. The most important of these is the pampa, where gauchos can catch cattle, and when they do so, the player gains a new cattle tile which they'll place. Other actions include stealing the cattle from the other players and moving one's cattle tiles around in order to sort them and optimize the player's sets. Placing the gauchos on an action space requires dice, and each action requires a specific value on that dice. Now these dice are taken from the dice rodeo that I mentioned earlier and love so very much. At the beginning of each round, the dice are rolled, then, during their turn, a player takes 2 dice from the dice rodeo and uses them to place their gauchos. Additionally, the player's gaucho workers can be trained in order to improve their ability to catch cattle in the field. It's also possible for a player to snatch valuable cattle right out from under their opponent's noses by making strategic plays, or even underhandedly abduct an animal out from another herd. Players sort their cattle by breed and assemble them in herds, and then, at the end of each round, each completed set of cattle is sold. The game ends when the pile of cattle tiles runs out, and then the player who made the most money wins the game. El Gaucho was first published in 2014 and includes a game board featuring 4 pastures and 6 action areas, 60 cattle tiles, 32 gauchos, some scoring tiles, money tokens, and of course, the 9 dice that make up the Dice Rodeo. The life of a fantasy athlete has got to be challenging. Go out there, score, or die. Perhaps sometimes both. And that is the premise put forth in Blood Bowl and Blitz Bowl. The Blood Bowl event hosts the ultimate showdown between 2 fantasy sports teams that are based on a variety of fictional archetypes, playing a warped version of American football. But this version of football incorporates more violence, dirty tricks, and deadly weapons than a Raiders home game. The Blood Bowl boxed game contains 2 teams, the humans, who are flexible enough to adapt to any style of play, and the orcs, who make up in brute force what they lack in finesse. But these 2 teams aren't the only ones in the Blood Bowl League, because the game is expandable, with additional teams and rules available in expansions and supplements. Coincidentally, supplements may explain the orcs' brute force. Actions in the game are resolved through the use of standard 6-sided dice, which are used to do things like pick up the ball, pass it, or catch it, or dodge past an enemy player. Custom dice are used when one player wishes to block another, and these dice use graphics to represent each of the different, but all equally violent, potential outcomes. Games of Blood Bowl typically last around an hour or 2, but Blitz Bowl, on the other hand, is designed to be a faster-paced version of Blood Bowl, with games typically lasting about 30 to 60 minutes. Blitz Bowl teams are smaller than those in Blood Bowl, but the game features a number of elements that will still be familiar to fans of Blood Bowl. Blitz Bowl includes a double-sided game board, dugout boards which list the 7 actions that players can take throughout the game, player cards, drill cards, 3 different types of dice, challenge cards, which provide opportunities for players to earn extra points, and 12 push-to-fit miniatures representing the members of each team. So, whether you're in the mood for a grueling grind across the gridiron or a quick blitz of ball-based battle, Blood Bowl and Blitz Bowl have got you covered. I was going to say that got the bases covered. They have the bases covered. That's a pun. It's the wrong sport, now that I think about it, but it's still a pun. So the bases covered is what I would have said. What's better than a healthy dose of unabashed capitalism? Unabashed capitalism in 3D, of course. 1998's Filthy Rich, created by Richard Garfield, the designer of Magic the Gathering, was inspired by a view of Hong Kong's back alleys and streets which were lined with business signs. These billboards compete with each other for the eyes of customers, enticing them into their stores to spend their hard-earned money. In Filthy Rich, players are business owners posting their own billboards in strategic locations in order to generate cash and achieve the lifestyle of the rich and infamous. What makes Filthy Rich so unique is that it's played in a binder of 4 pages of transparent card protector pages. Players use these 3x3 grids of card sleeve spaces to launch business billboards by sliding cards into the slots on each of these pages. On each turn, a couple of dice are rolled, which indicate the binder page that becomes active and the specific billboard that pays off that turn. If a player has a billboard that can be seen in the space that corresponds to the number rolled, even if that billboard is on a different page, then that billboard generates its specific income for its owner. Income is then spent to acquire luxuries, and the first player to own 3 luxuries wins the game. Filthy Rich, I love it. It's innovative, it's quirky, and admittedly, it also feels about 85% finished. For example, each turn that the 10-sided die, which determines which of the billboards in the 3x3 grid pays out, each time that dice rolls a 10, players instead have to pay taxes on their possessions instead of earning any income. This random taxation has led to games in which players get stuck or go bust. As a result, the group that I usually play this game with applies a house rule to the way taxes are rolled to make them a little more predictable. Even so, Filthy Rich is still a fascinating game that I highly recommend that everyone try playing at least once. Then again, I may be being way nicer to this game than it actually deserves. So if you've had a chance to crack open this contest in capitalism, share your thoughts with me in a comment and let me know what you think about this game. Add a little bit of divine intervention to your dice rolls with either this dice or devil angel pin strapped to your lapel, lanyard, backpack, or other pinnable surface. Roll with grace and confidence with either one of these 1-inch enamel pins by your side.